Okay, so I believe we are recording. Okay, so this is our image. We're gonna mainly work off of the layers panel. Okay, so this is what the layers panel looks like. If you don't have it in your tools over here, you can go to Window and find it, or you can just try to change your workspace. If you hit it on Essentials, you can just kind of toggle these around and you'll get different results. So, we're going to be working with mainly photography, so I'll work with photography, but Essentials will give you even more limited constraints. So find one that works for you. This is the main option that we're going to be working with is the layers panel here, okay? I'm just going to move this up here so I have a little more space. All right, so first thing that we need to do is we need to unlock our image, okay? This base layer is always going to be locked, so to unlock it, just double click on it. That'll unlock it. All right, now we have an unlock layer. Okay, has anyone ever heard of the term non-destructive editing? No, okay. So non-destructive editing is you don't want to, you always want to have enough layers to where you can go back to your original image, okay? So let's say we're going to do some effects on this layer, some brightness, contrast, stuff like that. The best bet is to just have this layer just be your regular ass photo and then just make a new layer, almost a copy, and we'll do the changes and stuff on that so that we can always get back to our image that has no effects on it. Y'all following me? Okay, so the way that we can do that is you can just select your layer, your image layer, and hit Command J, and then it'll make a duplicate layer. Okay, so Command J. So you should have two layers of the same thing. You can, if you wanna name them, just double click on the name and you can rename this. So this could be base layer or whatever, and this one could be effects. All right, so you know that this one is always the one that I can go back to. You can turn on and off any of these layers by just toggling the eyeball. Okay, so both of those are off. But you can toggle them on and off so you can see, because you kind of want to compare what your changes are going to look like to your original image. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do is, let me just adjust this screen a little, and let me get rid of this. Okay, so let's just take a look at our image. So if you hit Command plus, you can zoom in really far to the image. All right, you want your image to be still pretty crisp when it's at 100, okay? So the 100 is at the bottom here. That's the zoom amount, okay? You want it to still be, the resolution on this isn't great. It looks pretty crisp on my screen. You want it to still be pretty crisp when it's at 100. That's how you know it's a 72 DPI image. If it's still really crisp when you zoom into 300, which it is not, okay? It's a print-ready image, okay? So that's a really quick trick that you can tell without having to go in and see how many DPI is this image, blah blah blah. That you can tell by, so if you're getting something ready for print, and if you zoom into 300 and it's not crisp still, that means that your image isn't actually print ready. Okay, so that's just kind of like a hot tip. All right, so first let's think about cropping this image, okay? So we're going to grab the crop tool. It looks like this over here. This is the crop tool. Okay, we're just going to click on it, and it's going to put you in this edit mode. Okay, so those of you that have maybe edges of the, weird edges of the image or a weird shadow or something, you may want to crop it out. Okay, so I'm just going to, and this is just composition. I'm going to put this Sima's packaging right in the middle of this this grid formation, this compositional formation, and I'm just going to shrink in the sides a little bit, just so I have a little bit better composition and less white space. Okay, so that's on you. Go ahead and just decide how you want to crop it. If you have a really nice color background, maybe you really want to show those sides. The more you zoom in, the less information that you're going to get about the size of the object, right? So just think about all those things. And then when you're ready, you just hit, this is your home button. This is the black arrow in Illustrator. Just go ahead and click that, and it'll ask you if you want to crop it, and you can just hit crop. Yes. Okay, so we are cropped. Everybody has been successful in cropping your image? Yes. It's this one here. Oh, I'm sorry. There you go. Okay, so a lot of these tools have like multiple tools inside of them. Y'all, if you can't find the tool, a lot of the tools have like multiple tools within it. So if yours looks different and it's about the same situation as mine, if you just click down, you'll see that you have like multiple tools within one tool. So if you're having that issue where you can't find something, it may just be buried in here. Okay, so once we've cropped, we're gonna call some layer masking effects. Okay, so we're gonna open up our layers again. And the first thing that we're going to work with is we're going to work with brightness contrast, okay? We're going to get these effects layers down here in the layer panel, okay? So it's going to be this like kind of yin-yang, half-moon looking thing over here. If you click on that, these are your adjustment layers. It's going to give you a bunch of different options, okay? The first one that we're going to work with is, let's go ahead and just work with the brightness contrast, okay? This is sort of like really basic one. And it's going to open up some options for you here. Okay, so I'm going to zoom in, and on Simon's, I'm just going to increase the brightness a bit, and maybe also just increase the contrast. All right, so if I go back to layers now, what I want to do is I want to assign this adjustment layer to this individual layer, because again, I just want this layer to have the effects. All right. So what's happening here is that because this layer is just on top, both of these images are gonna inherit it. Okay. There's a way that we can tell the adjustment layer, hey, just work with this image, and we just hit the Alt key and hover in between the adjustment layer and the layer. Okay. So if we just hit the Option Alt key, and you hover in between this layer that you want the effect to apply to and the effect, it's going to give you this like weird little icon. It's like a box and an arrow. So if you just click on the layer with that box and arrow, it's going to add this little arrow. And that means that this adjustment layer is only applied to this layer. Okay? So now when I turn off this layer, as you can see, there's my original image. All right, without the adjustments. Okay, any questions so far? Okay, so let's talk about your whites in your image, okay? You want to pick one white and have that be your brightest spot, okay? So, let me show you what this is going to look like when things are too bright so that you can know like when to peel it back, all right? So, to get back into your adjustment layer, you just double click on it and it'll bring you up those properties again, okay? So here's where things start to get too bright, right? You don't want the image to, okay, on this screen it doesn't look that bad. On my screen, it's like the white is like screaming at me, okay? You want the white to feel balanced and you want it to feel clean, but you don't want it to be oversaturated, okay? You don't want anything to look oversaturated. So just to give you an example, like, this is oversaturated, okay? This is an image with a nice balance. Still maybe a little dark, but you want to watch like where these whites are coming through. You don't want them to like blow out. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay. So there's another way that we can work with this brightness and contrast. That will give us a little bit more control. So if your image looks like pretty good and you just need to bring up the brightness and the contrast a little bit, you can just use brightness contrast, or I'm going to turn this one off for a second. We can go down here and we can use the levels. Okay, levels is a bit more sophisticated version of brightness contrast, all right? What it allows you to work with, it allows you to work with all the dark tones separately, all the mid tones separately, and all the light tones separately, okay? So what I can do here is I can bring up my light tones, but then at the same time I can sort of bring down my medium tones. All right, so see how you can kind of get a little bit more advanced editing with this here. Now, so Sima's project here, you know, I want it to be rather light. So I may want to just kind of play with the brightness adjuster and then the mid-tone adjuster just to see what kind of effects I can get. And then let's say, so Sima, in real life, your packaging, it's a little more vibrant here, right? Like the colors are a little bit more vibrant. There's many different ways that we can do this. We can do like the color balance. We can do all different kinds of stuff, but we can actually select, like, so maybe let's select the blues here, and we can specifically make all the blues a bit brighter. Okay, so and we can go through and select the individual colors and make the individual colors a bit brighter. All right, so let's take a look at what that looks like. So when I turn that off, all right, so looking a lot better. Again, my screen's a lot brighter than what you're seeing. Okay, so you want to just find this balance. Now, one of the things that I'm noticing here is that this little spot right here on Sima's button, I think everything looks really good besides this little spot right here that when you see when I turn this off, this individual button kind of looks a lot better without this adjustment layer. And I'm going to make this one apply to the one below it specifically. All right, so this little white box right here, it's what's called an adjustment layer. You can paint on the adjustment layer. If you paint with black, it takes it off. If you paint with white, it puts it back on, okay? So this is non-destructive editing. Let me show you what I'm talking about with an example on the actual image itself. So you don't have to follow this. This is gonna come into play with another workshop that we do, but just to show you what I'm talking about, you can add a layer mask to anything. So I'll add the layer mask here, and then I'll grab my paintbrush. All right, and I can use any type of paintbrush to kind of quote-unquote paint away from an image. All right, so I can actually paint into this image, okay? But I'm not just painting with a color, I'm painting with almost like an eraser. But the beauty of this is that when I switch back to white and I'm painting on the layer mask, I can put it back on. Okay, so it's kind of like a really fancy eraser that so you can erase things, but then you can put them back on. Okay, so I'm gonna delete this, but we can apply that same concept to your effects. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is I'm going to go into this layer's layer mask. I'm gonna grab my black. So I grab the paintbrush. I'm gonna grab black. Here's your sizing and stuff right here. So I'm gonna grab a brush that's really nice and soft around the edges. Okay, it's not hard. It's not gonna just like stamp a circle. It's gonna be like really nice and soft, like one of these. And then here's my size. So I can adjust the size here. So I'm gonna make it kind of soft, and I'm gonna make it a little bit smaller than the button. All right, I'm gonna make sure that I'm on the layer mask that I wanna work with. And I'm just gonna kind of paint on here and see how it's taking that effect off. See that? Okay, so that's the way that you can really leverage these effects in really specific ways for the specific parts of your image. So let's take a look at another image, all right? So let me see if I can find an image that will make a little more sense here. Okay, we can keep working with this one. But some other things that I wanna show you is you can continue to work with lots of different effects. Okay, so maybe let's work with our hue saturation right now. So let's click on hue saturation, and we can change the hue of the entire image. All right, so if your color isn't coming through like exactly how you want it to, you can adjust it here. So Simon, I actually think yours is like a little more turquoise than it is in this image, right? Like this color is like a little more true to form. All right, and then maybe I want it to be a bit more saturated. I don't want it to be this saturated. This would be bad, right? Yeah, looks super cool. But you want to just have your images be like bright and crisp and not like completely like fucked up looking, okay? That's the goal. We can add in a little bit more lightness or a little bit more darkness to kind of even it out. Okay. All right, and what I have here, I don't know if you guys can see this, but see how the background has started to get like a little pixelated? Okay, that's how you know you've kind of pushed those effects a bit too far. Okay, so you really want to be like zooming in and out. All right, taking stock of what you're doing to your image. So I'm gonna go back into this hue saturation. Whoops. And you just click on the actual little icon here to get back in there. And I'm gonna pull the lightness back just a little bit. All right, and just kind of level this out so that it's not so pixelated. Okay. All right, I'm gonna switch over to this other image. So this is Xena's here. Okay, so let's take a look at Xena's image. So as you can see in Xena's image, we have like a ton of saturation in this part, right? And like these look pretty true to form here, right? Like the colors are all really popping. But in the buttons, they're like a little lackluster, right? Just a little bit, right? Like they're a little more pale. Okay, so what I can do is that same process, right? So I can go in here. I'm gonna make a new image. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and grab. I'm gonna grab my levels. I like to use levels. You can work with brightness, contrast. You feel free to start just working with any of those adjustment layers. See what they do. See how they change your image. All right, I'm gonna bring up the brightness here a bit, and then maybe bring this up a bit. Okay, so I'm trying to get these images to register out like in the same way that this part does. All right, so this effect has kind of positively affected this part, but it's sort of blown out the rest of the image. So what I can do here is I can go in with my my brush, okay, and I'm just gonna paint over the whole thing really broadly, okay, paint over the whole thing, and it's gonna turn that layer mask almost completely black. This will sort of show you like what you've gotten. So it looks like I've like missed a little piece here. So I'll just go over it again. Just make sure that I have everything. Okay, and then I'm gonna choose a little bit smaller brush and maybe make it not so soft. All right, and I just encourage you to use like a lot of trial and error with this process. Okay, and then I'm gonna paint on the layer mask with white now. And that's going to allow me to affect these two buttons. Okay, and then I can still I can change the opacity of this mask. Like maybe this is a little too bright. Maybe I want to just balance it out a little bit. I can also go back in here and change the effects. Okay, so I think this image now looks a lot better than what the one did before. See the difference there? Okay, so what I want you to do for homework is go ahead and just experiment with all of these different ones here, okay? So like, for instance, if your buttons are black and white, I don't think anybody did do black and white, but you can put like a black and white filter on things and mess with the colors, right? To like get them to render out really sharply. And anytime you don't like a layer mask, you can just select it and delete it, okay? So go ahead, just delete this one. Some other options for you would be photo filter. All right, so sometimes your images will have like sort of a blue tint or a yellow tint, or maybe you want them to have a little tint. You can use photo filter, which is down here, and that'll apply some of these like warming. You know, so like if your image kind of has like a weird blueness to it, which happens a lot, you can add a yellow filter to it and it'll kind of calm it down a little bit. Same thing with Xena's. Like this is like a really, really saturated color, and I think overall looks pretty good, but we may want to use a photo filter that's like sort of opposite of the color, so maybe we do a cooling filter, and it'll just kind of calm down those like super, super saturated colors. So I'll show you what this looks like. Okay, so and it just depends. Like you wanna have your image look like as true to life as possible. Okay, so you want to work on the color balance. You want to work on all these different things. So I would focus on brightness, levels. You could do color balance. This will give you like individual colors that you can affect. I think my image is hidden still, so that's why you can't see it. All right, so this color balance will allow you to kind of correct your colors a little bit. So let's say, Zena, like maybe you know that the pink is like way more poppin' than it is in this image. All right, so you can really slightly affect your colors here. Ooh, that looks good. Right, so like that looks, I think that looks a lot crisper and cleaner. And I think it also sort of toned down that crazy background. Okay, so this, I would say this is like a well-balanced image. Okay, does that help? Is anyone confused? Okay, so all I want you to do is, it's okay if your images aren't like totally stellar, they don't turn out exactly the way that you want them to. I just want you to get comfortable using these adjustment layers, okay? So give me 2 images that look like true to life, really crisp, have a nice color balance. Experiment with these adjustment layers. Try all the different ones, and then if you don't like it, you can just turn it off, okay? With the eyedropper here, really easy. If you stumble upon something that you think is really cool and glitchy and you really like how that's presenting your buttons, go ahead and save a copy of that one too and upload it, okay? Like if so, please give me 2 images, but if you accidentally make something that you think is particularly dope, like go ahead and save that, okay? Okay, but you just need 2 images that are the color balance, the light balance, they look true to form, they look really crisp and nice. If you need examples of what I'm talking about in terms of like image quality, there's a Pinterest board that I made that we kind of looked at before we took this documentation. I will link that to your homework documentation, okay? Okay, any other questions, comments, concerns? No questions, or is that just indifference?